We are here in Athens at a landmark consultation of the World Council of Churches, marking the centenary of the Life and Work Conference, first held in Stockholm in 1925. That was actually the milestone, a big milestone in the ecumenical movement in terms of its commitment to social justice and international cooperation in general. With us is Mr. Peter Proof, the Director of the Commission of the Churches and International Affairs. Mr. Proof, thank you so much for joining us today. We will go directly to your report, the report that you delivered here in Athens, in the Athens meeting. You highlighted some very concerning global trends during delivering the report. You draw a striking parallel between today's geopolitical landscape and the conditions that preceded the catastrophic wars of the 20th century. Could you elaborate on these specific trends a bit, and what do you see as the most alarming issues today globally?
Thank you, Zanti. Well, when the Stockholm Conference convened 100 years ago in 1925, it was a time of persistent tensions carried over from the terrible conflict of the Great War, but resurgent populist nationalism, increasing confrontation globally, and an escalating arms race, and enormously escalating economic inequality. Sound familiar? We find ourselves in a very similar set of circumstances, and the prognosis from that point is, as we have learned from history, not good. But what we've also been reflecting on during these days together is the message and the body language and the reflections that came out of the Stockholm Conference and what happened afterwards. So I think one of the main values of the Stockholm Conference was that in the midst of these divisions, of these persistent and continuing and escalating confrontations, that churches from all around the world, not all around the world, but from many parts, and especially from countries that had recently been in conflict during the Great War, came together. They met. The simple fact of their meeting, of their visible unity, was an enormously powerful message in that context. Of course, it didn't prevent what subsequently happened in the Second World War. But we have been remembering also what the ecumenical movement has done and contributed since the Stockholm Conference, in particular in terms of supporting and actually engaging in the development of international law and of legal accountability mechanisms to those principles of international law. We have much more now as a result of that work. We have many more assets and many more tools that we can use. So what we are trying to do in this conference is to recall that heritage, to remember what we did as an ecumenical movement then, what new assets we developed in the meantime, in order to respond hopefully more effectively to this very negative trajectory that the world is on, and to prevent that worst case outcome.
Thank you. Going back to a topic that is always, I would say, at the top of your agenda, especially within the United Nations context, nuclear deterrence and ethics. You have also raised here important ethical concerns regarding the doctrine of nuclear deterrence, particularly in NATO's newest member states, such as Sweden and Finland. What moral questions are the churches in general highlighting in this context, and how are policymakers engaging with them? How can we influence actually, as WCC and ecumenical movement, these international affairs discussions?
Well, look, it's obvious and it's natural that in a context where there's so much more antagonism and confrontation between nuclear weapon states, it's obvious that many more countries are looking for protection. Many more are looking for security of the nuclear umbrella. But the doctrine of nuclear deterrence implies that we, as citizens of nuclear weapon or nuclear umbrella states, are willing to contemplate the use of nuclear weapons against cities and to destroy entire communities, to destroy entire ecosystems, and for generations to come. The question that I think confronts us from a Christian ethical point of view is, are we, as Christians, prepared to contemplate the use of the most destructive weapons ever created by human beings under any circumstances? And I think that's a question that we've never really fully engaged with, and it is really incumbent upon us now in the ecumenical movement to confront that question and to interrogate our own position with regard to the doctrine of nuclear deterrence. And of course, with Sweden and Finland having just recently become the most recent members of NATO, they provide us with, if you like, laboratories for having those discussions and for interrogating that question. So we are talking to counterparts in our member churches in Sweden and in Finland about the possibility of convening and promoting discussions within and among the churches on this very important question.
Peter, in the past year, you have repetitively spoken about a very significant crisis of multilateralism, and you have also questioned the current capacity of the United Nations to respond effectively to today's global crisis. What do you actually see as the key obstacles in this renewed cooperation that we all want to see, and how churches and faith-based actors in general could contribute towards a direction that is collaborative and genuine?
So I mentioned that since the Stockholm Conference 100 years ago, we as an ecumenical movement have worked very hard to promote the development of and the utilization of international law, of mechanisms to protect human rights, to promote disarmament, to ensure peace and security. But those mechanisms, those principles and those institutions, in particular the United Nations, are, as we all know, now under sustained attack as a result of the increasing populist nationalisms that we see in many countries around the world. So it seems incumbent upon us, in light of that heritage and that previous engagement, to defend the principles, the instruments of international law, and the mechanisms for accountability to those principles that we helped to create. Because we know what happens in the absence of those guardrails. We saw that historically in the years following the Stockholm Conference, in the absence of those mechanisms. So it's very important for us in the ecumenical movement to protect what we helped to create. Mm-hmm. And I think we can do that by setting an example. In the same way that the Stockholm Conference, simply the act of coming together, was a very powerful message to a divided and dividing world. Today, too, the ecumenical movement coming together across these divisions, presenting an example of unity in the midst of such fragmentation, is the best and most powerful message that we can present. And just here today, we've been talking about the need for a reflection and consequent action by the ecumenical movement on the relationship between our notions of ecumenical unity, of synodality among the churches and within the churches, and the concept of multilateralism in geopolitics. I think we want to not just reflect on that, but to assert that message, to convey that message, to present that example to a world in crisis.
Young people are watching us around the world. Do they have a specific way? Are they able to participate in the work of the Commission on International Affairs? Younger researchers interested in advocacy, etc.?
Absolutely. And we've just been talking, actually, we've had an interaction with representatives of the Youth Commission, the WCC Commission on Youth in the Ecumenical Movement, about the possibility of working together to create youth hubs, whereby we bring constituencies of young people into connection with the work that we seek to do in the fields of peace building, of human rights, of international law, and so forth, and not only equip them or to train them, but to make partnerships with young people to whom this toxic heritage is being bequeathed.
Thank you, Peter. And to close this discussion here in Athens, with all the values that we have around democracy, citizenship, directly connected with international life and law in general, are you able to share with us in one sentence the vision for this important ecumenical year 2025? What is it for you and specifically for the Commission? How would you summarize it in a sentence?
It's a fantastic constellation of important anniversaries. In the same year that we mark the centenary of the Stockholm Conference and the life and work tradition in the ecumenical movement, we're also marking the 1700th anniversary of the First Ecumenical Council in Nicaea. And we've reflected during these days on the connections, historically and theologically, between Nicaea and Stockholm, between that fundamental expression of Christian unity at a theological level and the, if you like, applied Christianity, addressing itself to challenges in the world, in the global order, in politics, in economics, for peace and security. And I think that it's important for us to lean into that connection that this is part of a continuum. Stockholm didn't emerge out of nothing. It emerged out of a fundamental coming together of Christians who were recognizing themselves as a global community, as a transnational community, as having a common identity, despite all the divisions of national borders, of all the other human-created divisions that afflict our world.
Thank you, Peter, for your time with the World Council of Churches Communications and for engaging with our audience as well. That was a glimpse from our work here in Athens with CCIA. Stay tuned in WCC Communications for more interviews and updates from the work of the conference.